with these deliveries continuing to happen over and over and over again, they're very close to running out of silver. I think they've lost control.
This is Kaiser Johnson with Liberty and Finance, and these are the Miles Franklin Weekly Specials for June 3rd through June 10th, 2024, while supplies last. First, we feature 2023 1-ounce Gold Britannia at just $59 over spot. We also have backdated 1-ounce Silver Britannia at $3.10 over spot. Next, we have pre-33 XF Gold $10 Liberty coins at just $59 over melt. And finally, we have a highly limited supply of 1/10 ounce Platinum Britannia at $59 over melt. To order our specials or any of the many other options we have available, call us at 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237. We're available after hours and on weekends, and we look forward to speaking with you.
Welcome back to Liberty and Finance. We're always delighted to have this widely followed returning guest. You know him. He is the CEO of Miles Franklin Precious Metals. Andy Schectman joins us for this weekly market update. We're filming this Monday, June 3rd, for tomorrow's release, Tuesday, June 4th. Andy, thanks for coming back on Liberty and Finance for this weekly market update.
Always a pleasure, my friend. Thanks for having me, Dunnigan. Always great to see your face.
We've got so much to talk about, and I want to jump right into it. But first, I'm distracted by the photo on the poster on the wall behind you. I'll make a joke here before you get a chance to explain it, and that is that my wife is really into nutrition and keeps us educated on that. And we do take colloidal silver, which is antimicrobial, blah, 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 blah. They also have colloidal gold. So it's not unheard of to ingest gold. We also have it on some.
Yeah, but this is actually comes out of the painting. It's a big bar. It was given to me as a gift, and I fell in love with it. So I did some rearranging, and I hope it's not too distracting. But I like it. I don't know. It's a little bit crazy, but so am I. So it's all good.
Well, you have to be, after being dragged through the last century /4 decades /few years of misdirection and false information, official by policy, not only misinformation, but toxic actions on the part of our financial and monetary overlords that are affecting, they're basically stealing from ordinary earners, savers, and retirees. And the vast, vast majority of people that I come in contact with, when I talk to them about, do they understand how unprotected they are if they have their savings in dollars or in the bank or in pension plans, et cetera, that are exposed to this false market and the false currency, and they have no idea what I'm talking about. And I'm more concerned now than I was when we started Reluctant Preppers back in 2013. So the work is plentiful, and the harvest is plentiful, and the workers are few. And so here we are trying to get the word out, and I need your help at that.
Well, I love that, Dunnigan, and it's an honor. I guarantee you the 85,000 Yoda customers who have $115 million in savings locked up understand what that is. And just as an aside, I know you didn't ask me this question, but I found it interesting. It's called a fintech company. This middleman, Synapse, who's filing for bankruptcy. And what is a fintech company? A fintech company is something like Zelle or Venmo or even Robinhood. It's a middleman, so to speak. And the whole thing, it says the disruption caused by a dispute between fintech middleman Synapse and Tennessee-based Evolve Bank and Trust. Synapse serves as a middleman between customer-facing fintech brands and FDIC-backed banks, but has had disagreements with several of its partners about how much in customer balances it is owed. Their CEO said, "We never imagined a scenario like this could play out and that no regulator would step in and help." To think that we're out of the woods yet is so far a stretch, it's not even funny. And with the expansion of fintech companies in crypto, in payment processing, in all of these middlemen in a growingly, or I don't even think that's a word, in a growing and increasingly digital world, you're going to see a lot more of this. And it's disconcerting when you see a disagreement about how much each customer's balances are owed. It becomes a little concerning. And I think a lot of us have taken for granted the convenience that comes with these apps and these online portfolios, these fintech companies, which are not, some of them are, well, in this case, they're not FDIC backed. It's concerning. So yeah, a lot of people don't get it until it's too late. And that's why, I love the title Reluctant Prepper, because no one wants to prepare. No one wants to buy life insurance. It's reluctant when you do it. I just had to do it the other day and had to take the physical and all that. I was reluctant to do it. I didn't want to do it. But that's the whole premise of what we're doing here, is to wake up and to be prepared. And it's harder for me than it is for you, because you are someone who has all these wonderful guests on. And I'm someone who owns a precious metals company. So they think a lot of people are skeptical of me trying to sound the alarm. And I wish it weren't that way. I understand it intuitively. I get it. But, like I've said before, there should be the ability to run a good business and do the right thing. And that's what I try to do. And that's why I'm so honored to be here with you and to work with you, because I don't know that I've met anyone more honorable than you in 34 years of business. So hopefully that resonates with some of your listeners, because I do want to do the right thing. I do want to help people, because what's coming is scary, and it's getting scarier by the day as far as I'm concerned. Just go back and listen to what Lenin said. I don't know how many years ago that was, but he said the middle class should be ground between the millstones of taxes and inflation. Seems to me that's what's happening right now. So hopefully we can wake up some of the people before the whole middle class just disappears, and we can push back and do the best we can to not just survive, but maybe even thrive in the coming weeks and months ahead, as what's coming down the pike seems a little bit concerning to me.
You're reminding me of a couple of things I wanted to share. One, I was surprised you didn't mention in your list of financial technology companies. You rattled off a few of them, but for that matter, crypto exchanges would also fall into that category. They are, in a sense, a middleman between you and your coins. And on bitcoin.it wiki lists a list of failed exchanges. Mt. Gox was 2014, FTX 2022, BlockFi 2022, Celsius 2022, and 11 more of those. And their key at the top of that is, remember, not your keys, not your Bitcoin. So that's another thing that people need to keep in mind, is that even some of the alternative solutions, and frankly, with precious metals, is not without its list of companies that you need to be aware of who you're dealing with, because we've certainly talked to, and you and I have done a couple of shows about people who finally were convinced by some well-intended person who gave them advice, you really need to get your retirement into gold, for example. And then they ended up calling one of these big name places that fleeced them. So you've just got to be aware that when you're dealing with another counterparty in any area of your life, including financial areas especially, you have to know who you're dealing with. And
it's funny. Ever since you and I started talking about that publicly, obviously, I get a lot of calls, people concerned, thinking, did I partner up with the wrong company? And there's about a half a dozen companies that I would say are borderline criminal. And I never have mentioned their names out of respect, because it's not my place to do that. But I will tell you, there are two common threads in every single statement that I have looked at from all these different companies. Two things. One, gold coins. Don't know why they choose quarter ounce gold coins, but every single one of them do. Quarter ounce gold coins, most of which I've never heard of. Now, I've heard of the mint that makes them, but these goofy quarter ounce coins that supposedly have this great upside market potential, it's just a bunch of malarkey. And the other thing is either 1 ounce, 1.5 ounce, or 2 ounce silver coins that trade at roughly double to triple the market price of silver. Those are the two common threads that I see in every single case. And some of them, honestly, are enough to make you physically ill. I mean, you start to just get sick in your stomach when you hear people, I've been a postman my whole life, and I put my whole savings into this, and, I'm 80 years old. What am I going to do? And, it's really awful. And that's right. You should sound the alarm. We should talk about this more often, because it's once we start talking about it, I was blown away by how many people have got wrapped up in this. And the common denominator, aside from what the product is that these companies are very well funded and have the ability to have very impressive ad campaigns and very impressive spokespeople, whom I wonder if they have any idea. I would bet most of them have no idea the way these people do business, because these spokesmen, they're not buying like a customer would. They're getting paid a handsome salary and think they're doing the right thing, but they're not. And
and there's two more aspects that they would be probably unaware of. One is that they're enticed by the fact that the management of these companies sometimes have pedigrees connecting to the U.S. Mint or to some other place of knowledge or background that goes, wow, these people must be really official. And secondly, if these people have a high rating on the Better Business Bureau or something, I personally encountered with a client who had to very strongly assert over and over with a company until they finally made her close to whole after they originally cut her portfolio in half by overselling her these overpriced things like you were describing. So then she was made whole, but only after a tremendous amount of assertion. Most people, when they try their first attempt at assertion, either they don't even try because they feel like it was their fault for buying in at the wrong time or something like that, or secondly, if they get rebuffed, they're going, well, that's just my hard luck for that. But what they don't realize is that these companies can maintain sometimes their high rating by buying off the really grumpy client, the ones who are going to get their lawyers or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, if you call and say you're going to call the Department of Commerce, the Better Business Bureau, the Attorney General, and be very stern about it, you have a fighting chance. And it's really gross that when you see gold approaching its all-time highs, backed off a little bit from its all-time highs, and these people are still down, $300-400 per ounce or $100 each on a quarter ounce coin. It's just absolutely pathetic. It's wrong. And I don't know how these people sleep at night, because they all prey on IRAs. So you're dealing with older folks who have spent their life building their IRA, and it's not like they can go back to work at 75 years old. It's truly criminal, in my opinion. But that's the pitfalls of a federally non-regulated industry. This is one of the things that we hang our hats on. This is why I left my corporation in Minneapolis when I moved to Florida, because of it. It's the only state that has any semblance of regulation in a completely Wild West, non-regulated industry. Don't mean to belabor the point, but it's important to talk about it periodically. There are too many people that have been harmed by this.
Another thing I wanted to bring up is another angle that we could open up on a topic that we've discussed at great length, and that is the emergence of the global divide of the BRICS plus collaboration of nations versus the Western, you could say U.S.-led, because of the U.S. dollar being the world reserve currency, Bretton Woods standard, a U.S. dollar standard, and debt-based standard. So you've got half the world going towards commodity-based trading and making significant investments in each other's countries. Especially China has emerged as a absolute standout global player in terms of upgrading infrastructure, ports, highways, airports, bridges, technology infrastructure, et cetera, in countries all over the globe, and in collaboration for mineral rights, et cetera, from those countries, by the benefit of those facilities that they've added. An interesting take on that is recently just came out this last week in the Epoch Times, which understandably the Epoch Times has a jaundiced view of the Chinese but it's not the U.S. government's view. It's the Epoch Times view, but they still bring a different highlight to that. And I wanted to get your take on that. And I know you have some thoughts about that. There's a story here from the May 29th through June 4th issue of the Epoch Times. It says, in a blow to China, Argentina's Milei looking to the U.S. for defense cooperation, and they specifically say in here, from 2009 to 2019, China transferred a total of $634 million worth of major military hardware to 5 South American countries: Argentina, Bolivia, Ecuador, Peru, and Venezuela. They talk about a concentration of space telescope type installations by China in not only in Central and South America, but in the Caribbean area, where they say orbiting satellites tend to go. And they're saying that these are dual use facilities potentially, where China could use them as military bases or for military purposes. And specifically says the People's Republic of China has expanded its ability to extract resources, establish port, manipulate governments through predatory investment practices, and build potential dual use space facilities, according to the U.S. Southern Command General Laura Richardson said during a 2023 Armed Services Committee briefing. So at any rate, this idea that it's not a new idea, even in the U.S. domestically, where people say, "Gee, why doesn't the government do something?" or "Why doesn't Washington give us a bailout?" or "Why don't we get block grants for improving our highways?" and so on. We find that there is a string attached often when you get gifts from on high, and even when it comes out seeming like it's a windfall or a boon to the locals, it often means that the hand that gives is above the hand that receives, and there are expectations associated with that, or outcomes that you weren't told about originally. So some people are always playing a few steps ahead in the chess game. Any thoughts from you on that particular angle?
Yeah. First, I want everyone to watch this. You see that? You see that Glenn Beck, Color Revolution? Color Revolution, the underground anti-Trump cabal. I watched it last night. It'll blow your darn mind. It'll blow your mind about who intervenes in other countries' affairs. It's not China. We have a long history of doing that. And I don't know why I always feel like I need to say this, but I am a patriot, and I thank God every day for living in this country and the opportunities it afforded me. But to go around and point fingers at a country like China when the United States has 750 U.S. military bases in 80 countries. And when we talk about, meddling in other countries' affairs, we should have listened to Thomas Jefferson and not done that. We should have a secure border, bring all of our troops home, and help. And instead of meddling in others' affairs, if you want to put them to work, have them help build our infrastructure, which is crumbling and decaying. And all the money that costs, that supply chain, the supply chain of keeping all of these 750 military bases in 80 countries supplied, it's extraordinarily expensive. And so, this is a very anti-Chinese slant. And as far as I'm concerned, if I had my druthers, I would rather partner up with a country that wants to be cooperative. Now, it doesn't always work out. Some of these countries are third world, and they don't know how to manage their affairs or manage their funds or manage their promises, perhaps the way that they originally signed up for. Maybe it's kind of like all of these people being given, checks to pay off their student loans, including the mayor of St. Paul, who makes $140,000 a year, just got his the rest of his college tuition paid off. But you make a deal, honor it, and if you fall short of it, well, that's not China's fault. And when you talk about these spy satellites or whatever that they're going to do look, in 2022. All of these BRICS nations created a joint committee on space cooperation. It's like kind of like a NASA, if you will. And it reads, this committee plays a crucial role in enabling member space agencies to work closer together regarding environmental protection, disaster prevention, and mitigation and tackling climate change with efficient. That's what it is. Yeah, it's also military. Let's just call it what it is. But I think what I'm really getting at is that we're past the point of the U.S. being able to point fingers, and if anyone should have fingers pointed at them, it's the U.S. institutions, it's the government of the United States. And I hate to say it, but it's true. And China doesn't have 750 military bases around the world. And if you listen to that Glenn Beck interview, it will truly blow your mind, because the one thing that we see in all of these uprisings, starting with like with the Arab Spring, are these NGOs, non-government organizations that are financed, a lot of them by Congress. And you find them in all of these uprisings, including in Hungary and in the Arab Rising. They're now doing it in Palestine, this is something, or in Gaza, excuse me, and now there's proof that they're funding some of these college uprisings, and had been planning it since November. So when you talk about conspiracies, when you talk about meddling, when you talk about meddling in others' affairs, I think that's the pot calling the kettle black. And while China is not perfect, I do believe that they are far more cooperative than we are. And when you can threaten people with sanctions and now confiscation of assets, it's really not cooperation as much as it is being cooperative with a gun to your head. So I guess that's just my 2 cents. And again, I'll say it again. I love this country, and I just think it's time for a change in the way that we do things. And, I wouldn't go around pointing fingers. Quite to the contrary. It's this attitude that is making all of these countries join together and finding safety in numbers for sure.
I'd like to underscore one of the aspects you mentioned, because when we were at the Ron Paul Institute's Peace and Prosperity Conference in Washington, D.C., he was talking about the unspoken cost to the U.S. and to the world of our far-flung military adventurous expansionist policies and footprint. And one little note that our good dear deceased friend Rob Kirby brought up about that, I'll bring up. You guys can check this out on wikipedia.org. The department, well, first, let me just tell you that the largest consumer of fuel in the U.S. is the entire transportation sector. So think of all transportation in the U.S. That's all trucking, all cars, all airplanes, and everything within the U.S. consumes 13.7 million barrels of petroleum per day, whereas the Department of Defense globally uses 4.6 billion gallons, which is 112.6 million U.S. gallons of fuel per day. So it's a little tricky there because it's barrels versus gallons. But even if you divide by 50, the U.S. Department of Defense looks like it's one of the largest single consumers of petroleum and generators of CO2 in the world.
And I wonder if that even includes the supply chain lines. I mean, it's one thing to fund when you got aircraft carriers and airplanes and Humvees and tanks and all of these things that take fuel. But I wonder if that's taking into account the infrastructure or the supply chain infrastructure line where all of these things have to come and be shipped to all of these bases. I don't know. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But that's really the point in all of this is it's just hypocritical. And that's what I think the world is sick and tired of, is the hypocrisy of the West in pointing fingers when you could argue that what we have done and what we continue to do covertly and out in the open is every bit as bad, if not in many cases worse. And I try and say that with an open mind and appreciative of, all the men and women in service who make us safe and help us, live the lives that we want. But the people pulling the strings up above are, in many cases, have lost their mind. And I think it's impossible for anyone to ignore that. And if you do, I think your head's in the sand.
We'd like to circle back, if we could, to the topic of the financial world and specifically the bullion industry and supply chain availability of products, et cetera, and pricing within that. If you could first bring us up to date on your latest research in the financial world. You talked about the risks that people aren't being warned about financial services companies that aren't even banks, and they aren't even brokerage companies. They're these in-betweeners, these middlemen that help to be the glue that makes everything so convenient for us, but that is another counterparty we're at risk of if we don't have sort of a off-grid or low-tech way of dealing with our financial savings and our nest eggs. Any new topics on that arena you'd like to bring up today?
And in the last few weeks, I've talked with you 2 weeks ago about how you're seeing these exchange for physical deliveries that are these large deliveries of kilo gold bars in particular that are being purchased in the West, delivered to BRICS Hong Kong, which is a COMEX facility, and then being trucked over to the Shanghai Gold Exchange. We've talked a lot about how the vaults are being drained and the bankers showing up at the Shanghai Metals Exchange, and now those vaults are being drained, in particular in silver, because you can't export gold, and these things are undeniable. But I just want people to understand kind of simplistically what's happening. So the Chinese vaults are being drained due to the large demand exceeding supply in West. And I think these bullion banks are trapped. I know Alistair McLeod kind of alluded to that in your interview with him that I watched last night, that these banks are trapped. And so the Shanghai Gold Exchange and the Shanghai Futures Exchange sees the physical price of silver go higher and at as much as $3 and $4 higher than the West. And because of this arbitrage that that's sucking all the metal over there, right? And these traders don't have loyalty to this country in terms of the long-term ramifications. They're making a ton of money. So as this demand keeps flowing there and the price goes higher, you got the brain dead bullion banks and the COMEX and the LBMA that continue to slam down the price harder. And the spread between silver in the West and silver in China is at least 10 to 15% as a result of all of this, or higher. And so these Western vaults are being drained as the traders are monetizing the arbitrage. And so when you see silver in the vaults drop to their lowest since 2020 in Shanghai, that is a very ominous sign, because once those vaults are drained, we already know there's only roughly 300 million ounces of silver on the LBMA, if we believe what they're saying. So when we talk about the Shanghai vaults and their inventory in silver dropping to the lowest level since 2020, and a 10 to 15% arbitrage, if you will, for all the importers, you could very much argue that we are seeing, you know, in the spirit of that what's his name, Mad Kitty or whatever it is on what's his name, the guy that tried to squeeze AMC and GameStop. A great movie, by the way, Dumb Money. What's his name, the Mad Kitty or whatever it is. You know, the whole idea of squeezing the silver market, and as Jeffrey, what's Jeffrey's last name? The trader from Goldman Sachs, not Jeffrey Christian, Jeffrey Curry said, you know, he said that the public can't squeeze the silver market because the public buys the ETFs, and the ETFs are the shorts. Talk about a faux pas, because when an ETF shorts metal, that's illegal. ETF is not supposed to hedge anything. They are a custodian for people making speculations in the metals market. There would be no need to hedge. Talk about a faux pas. But in any case, when we see the vaults in Shanghai draining to their lowest level and really falling almost to the day that these bullion bankers showed up at the Shanghai Metals Exchange in March, and straight down since then because of the 300 million ounces, if we believe those numbers, at the LBMA, and roughly 60 million ounces in registered at the COMEX, with these deliveries continuing to happen over and over and over again, they're very close to running out of silver. I think they've lost control. They went to China and asked. And look, the normal settlement at the COMEX and the LBMA, which is they're called spot contracts, which are basically promises to deliver, are being replaced now with the scramble for physical delivery. And this is a bad thing. This is a very scary thing if you are a bullion bank who is short. And these bullion banks have rehypothecated silver, I don't know, 100 times if you or more on the LBMA. They were supposed to believe it's only 16 or 17 times on COMEX. I have a hard time believing that, but whatever. Rehypothecated is rehypothecated. It is sold over and over and over and over again, where they didn't think that people would stand for delivery. And when these exchanges were founded, they didn't. But India, the Reserve Bank of India, just purchased 24 tons of gold in the first 4 months of 2024. That's 1.5 times what they bought all of 2023. And they bought more silver in the first quarter of 2024 than all of 2023, which was a record year of, I don't know, over 400 million ounces. So do the math. I mean, we're running out. And the BRICS, they are draining the Western vaults in the United States and in London. And I think that the West has lost control of the markets. I mean, it was down again today. All the technical guys are saying it was going to fall. And then what is it up now? Gold's up 1550. They can't hold it down any longer. And I think the banks are trapped. And I think these banks have a big problem. I do. And, you know, it's one of these deals where it's just like Bernie Madoff. He had a good thing going until people said they needed their money back and tried to redeem their money. To actually think there could be a force majeure or a short squeeze was something I had a real hard time coming to grips with until recently. And it just seems as though the BRICS, the Chinese, Russians, Saudis, these countries realize that that's how you win the war. It's not by firing missiles, but it's by beating us at a game just like this. And when you realize the biggest banks in the world, especially in the West, are the ones behind the suppression of silver and gold, these countries before didn't have the ability, the sophistication, the wealth, or even the interest of doing this until now. And they do. And this is something that people need to, I think, keep a very close eye on for sure. Because I have a feeling that it's only going to accelerate as we get closer to the election.
Well, for people who want to take shelter and to properly shelter themselves with real assets that don't have counterparty risk in the face of all of that chicanery that we're being inundated with, what can we offer them in terms of weekly specials that can do that at a bargain?
Yeah, and before I answer that, I just want to mention one other thing. Talk about chicanery and more proof that this country's lost its mind. The Daily Mail just came out with an article on Michelle Wu. She is the first female and Asian American mayor in the city of Boston. And she has just gone on to, she has promised to reallocate police funds to other city priorities and believes in demilitarizing law enforcement by limiting the use of tear gas, rubber bullets, and police dogs. Further, Wu wants police records of use of force to be made public, which critics say could endanger officer safety. She also wants to include certain categories of breaking and entering, wanton and malicious property destruction, larceny under 250, and trespassing as non-prosecutable crimes. You got to wonder, I mean, what the hell? Where are we? It's like you should put bananas on our flag instead of stars. And I just wonder sometimes if people really understand the gravity of these things that are all bearing down on us at the same time. Sometimes we focus too much on, gold and silver and economics, but the reality is that so much in this country is upside down right now. It's just crazy. I just want to read just a couple of things. These are the things that charges for which the default to decline prosecuting unless supervisor permission is obtained: trespassing, shoplifting, larceny under 250, disorderly conduct, disturbing the peace, receiving stolen property, minor driving offenses, including operating with a suspended or revoked license, breaking and entering, which is into a vacant property or where it is for the purpose of sleeping or seeking refuge from the cold and there is no actual damage to the property, wanton or malicious destruction of property, threats excluding domestic violence, minor in possession of alcohol, drug possessions with the intent to distribute, a standalone resisting arrest charge, i.e. cases where a person is charged with resisting arrest, and that is the only charge, and lastly, a resisting arrest charge combined with only charges that all fall under the list of charges to decline to prosecute, resisting arrest charge combined with only a trespassing charge. She wants to make all of these things non-prosecutable. And you have to ask yourself, where the hell are we? And so when we talk about buying gold and silver, it's not just to protect for economics. It's because all of these things are connected. All of these things will have a detriment on how the world looks at the United States, how the world wants to continue to own our treasury debt, which can be sanctioned and or confiscated, how the world wants to hold our dollars, which can be inflated away and created ad nauseum because of because of this country. We don't have to talk about the judicial system now, do we? Or the electoral system or the border problems, all of these things that I keep talking about. I really want people to understand that they're all connected. All of this is connected. One without the other isn't as strong. You put all this stuff together and the world looks at us like they've lost their mind. This is why the poo-pooers of the BRICS, I disagree with them to my core, to my soul, because we are not the country that we once were. At least that's the way the world looks at us. So why do you buy gold and silver? It's not just to protect for all the lunacy of the monetary and fiscal irresponsibility of our government and the Federal Reserve, but it's more along the lines of we are on the Rubicon, really, just about to cross over what I believe is a material change in the way things go in this country. And if you don't see that, maybe you need to take a step back and look at a broader picture, because it's starting to really get to me and I'm getting itchy over it all. Like, I can't believe more, like Trump being indicted on all 34 charges. You got to be kidding me. So anyways, to your point, what do we have? It's British week, evidently. British backdate Silver Britannias, $3.10 over spot. Backdate Gold Britannias, $59 over spot. And backdate 1/10 ounce Platinum Britannias at $59 over melt. And I also want to add what I think is maybe the best gold value that I have offered maybe since 2021 with you, when the last time we did this, I think, and that is the extra fine $10 Liberties, $59 over melt, which ends up working out to just a few dollars over spot gold, half ounce spot gold. The melt value of a $10 Liberty, just so people will know, is 0.49375, something like that.
48375.
Okay, thank you. So $59 over melt. And to me, that's as good of a buy as you could ever find, because right now, if you look and try to buy like a half ounce gold eagle, right now a half ounce gold eagle is going to cost you about 115 over melt, over which is half ounce. So you're talking a huge savings. Now, most of my career, which is 34 years, you wouldn't get a $10 Liberty within a grenade shot of a half ounce eagle. It would cost a lot more. Now it's actually costing a lot less. So I don't know. I think it's as good of a buy in gold as I've offered in a long, long, long time.
Well, Andy, we're always grateful for your presence here. And I know that today we went a little long. Both of us had a bit of a rant, and there's maybe more reason than usual for that. And
there is. And it's going to get worse as we get closer to the election, Dunnigan. Get ready.
So we are grateful for your presence. And if any of our viewers have questions that they'd like us to ask to you next time, they can email me they can put the word Andy question at libertyandfinance@protonmail.com. That's libertyandfinance@protonmail.com. Just put Andy question in the title. We'll try to get those queued up for next week. And as always, thanks for joining us for this weekly market update.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we're going to be together in July at the Rule Symposium here in Boca in my backyard. And, maybe we can do together at the end of the symposium one evening, an extra long live stream and talk about what's going on at the conference and all the questions that people have leading up to it like we did last year. That would be great. But in the meantime, I'll look forward to picking up where we left off on Tuesday. I hope you and everyone else out there has a great week, and bye until next week.
Thanks and take care. Blessings, everyone.
This is Kaiser Johnson with Liberty and Finance, and these are the Miles Franklin Weekly Specials for June 3rd through June 10th, 2024, while supplies last. First, we feature 2023 1-ounce Gold Britannia at just $59 over spot. We also have backdated 1-ounce Silver Britannia at $3.10 over spot. Next, we have pre-33 XF Gold $10 Liberty coins at just $59 over melt. And finally, we have a highly limited supply of 1/10 ounce Platinum Britannia at $59 over melt. To order our specials or any of the many other options we have available, call us at 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237. We're available after hours and on weekends, and we look forward